In this directory, I have a file named a.out, which you may guess from the name is an executable that I just created by compiling a C program. But if we don't have the C program or don't know where this file came from, then how can we find out more about it? One thing we could try is just looking at the content. Here I'm opening it in an editor that shows me control characters using sometimes backslash and sometimes an up caret. So this caret @ corresponds to the byte 0. So it's a file with a lot of zeros and underscore things like underscore text and so on. Once you see these kinds of things, then you might recognize that as an executable, but it could be a lot of other things too. A different tool we might try is called file. So file, you give it a file name, it looks at that file, and using a bunch of heuristics and rules that it knows, tries to tell you what that file is. So the file program here has categorized a.out as a executable. We see that as the keyword here. It's an executable specifically for Mach-O. Mach-O turns out to be a reference to the Mach operating system, which is the predecessor from the 1980s of the current macOS operating system. So it tells us that it's an executable compiled for macOS, specifically for a 64-bit variant of macOS, and specifically for the architecture ARM64. If I try compiling my program again, which it turns out was the hello program, and I use target equals 8664 macOS X, then we will get a.out again, and if I look at it this time, then it will say x86-64 instead of ARM64. So those are different processors, different instruction sets. Since you've learned more about the x86-64 instruction set, we'll stick with that one and we'll compile our example programs using this target selection here. Similar to trying to open this file in Emacs, we could display it with a program called xxd, which will show us the text similar to the way Emacs did. It's using dots where there's unprintable characters. Here we see the hexadecimal display of the actual bytes in the file, so lots of zeros as we saw. But what you also see as I scroll back and forth through it is sometimes it's garbage, but sometimes there are things we might recognize as text. And so there are some other tools that can help us find these kinds of names and categorize what they mean. A simple one is called strings, which will look inside the file that's expected to be some sort of executable or a library and find strings that are likely to be part of the program source. So here we see that strings found the string hello%s. And if I look at the original source program that I do actually have, then you can see that indeed that is a string that's in the program source.